All right, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching this. If you haven't already, please subscribe, leave a rating. No, I don't know if you do ratings and reviews. You just like and comment. And by the way, folks, I'm burying the lead. That is John Lund, my longtime friend.
Long time, long
Yes,
time. Yeah,
I remember
long time.
you came to the first that FM radio station.
Yeah, yeah.
Whether you want to say the radio stations or not, that's up to you.
I don't think it matters anymore. I don't think it matters anymore.
95.7. What year
Yeah,
did you come to 95.7 again?
they started that station in 2011, right before Niners season started. I got into town in July. August 1st, they debuted, and you were one of our first guests. Our first guest with Papa was actually Bip Roberts, but you were one of our first guests. And I remember meeting you. I've said this story a million times, but this is a totally different audience. You had this big hat on. It was like a safari hat. And I thought, who's that jackass with the safari hat? He looks stupid. And little did I know that Jim Harbaugh liked to do 3-hour practices in the dead of heat. And me being as fair skinned as I am, I'm burned, and I would have paid you $500 to $1,000 on the spot for that hat. By the end of the first practice, 3 hours long, I thought that is the smartest man alive. And then from that point forward, we forged a relationship based on the fact that right at 2011, you were at the game, and then you joined us over on KNBR. And I think your first prediction for the Harbaugh Niners lockout late was 6-10. I don't know why
That's
I remember that. I just do.
wow. Wow. Yeah, well, yeah, I remember
And there was no shame in that. There was no
no.
shame in that.
Well, I remember
They were
Jim
terrible.
Schwartz gave Harbaugh an even worse prediction, I think, and that led to the back slap and all that. I
Right.
thought coming off of that year where they didn't have an offseason program,
Yep.
Alex Smith's future with the team was up in the air. They decided that one day the lockout lifted. uh, Alex Smith came into the
Right.
facility and left with a box of materials, and it was like, go coach the offense. And how that team turned it around in 1 year or less than a year is one of the great achievements ever. And I tell you what, Jim Harbaugh, um, he always had this reputation, I think rightfully so, where quick results right away
Yeah.
over time, his message kind of, he just wore people out. And I saw it with the 49ers. Of course, him and Trent Baalke were the worst possible pairing. But the fact that he stayed, was it 9 years at Michigan?
Yeah.
And then what he's doing with the LA Chargers, I think I don't know, I'm not close to it, but it just seems like maybe he's kind of mellowed a little bit around the edges, softened around the edges. And I think he's kind of found something that really works, and maybe that perhaps will give him more longevity at any stop that he's at.
No, players seem to believe, and I just remember it was so strange and so quirky, and he had like just in social settings so strange and so weird. And I remember when he came on, guys like Lincoln Kennedy, and there was a few other guys that had been friends with him in the past. Rod Woodson had been friends with him in the past, and he completely changed. This was when he became 49ers head coach. They couldn't joke with him. They couldn't kid with him. These are former teammates who are really mad. We'd have him on after a win, and Harbaugh would be really cranky. He would be, I think the biggest one would, if people could go back to the Rick Bucher, I don't really think you know what you're talking about. And then after a loss, Jim would
Well,
try
I
to
don't know
build his
that one.
team up.
What's that one? The Rick
Um,
Bucher.
Rick, I like Rick and everything, big NBA guy, but one time he wasn't really sure what he was asking Jim. He was kind of, and Jim, he would pick up on those things, and he would use the media, as you well know, to kind of motivate his own team. And it was kind of taking a negative dig. I know that around it was something negative, and Jim, he picks up on those things, wants to stay relentlessly positive, and so he basically called him out. They didn't know what he was talking about, and everything, and the interview went horribly wrong. And we were the non-flagship of the Niners at that time, and so we'd get Jim once a month, and it would rotate between the shows. And so if you got Jim after a win, he would kind of try to downplay it. If you got Jim after a loss, he would try to pump his team up. So we were always hoping, as weird as it sounds, that we would have Harbaugh after a loss, because then he would actually be better on the air. He would be looser. He would be pumping up his team. He would be positive. After a win, he would be nitpicking into, hey, Jim, that's just a great win. And he would kind of nitpick on the negatives. Like it was kind of a strange thing, but you never know. And you know this better than I do. you just never know what guy you were going to get.
Yeah.
But you know what? As far as the players, for a certain time, and again, you know this, the gas station thing, it works for a while. And I think, and maybe it works longer at college, which is why I was at Michigan so long. But then you get into the pros, and I don't think these guys have a problem, and you know this. Staley and Willis and some of those guys have told me both on and off the air that, and I'm sure they've told you too, that after a while it wears thin. So as well as he's doing with the Chargers, I just don't know how long the shtick will work, because once it starts to kind of thin out, and once they've heard it 4 or 5 times, in college those guys graduate. In the pros, they're still around going, really? Are we still doing this?
Yeah. So anyway, John, and then after 95.7 the game, we both moved over to
Yeah.
KNBR, and we're doing things with KNBR, while of course I'm also at NBC Sports Bay Area. And so our Fridays, we would have a Friday radio hit. And the one thing
Right.
you would always do is you would look at my five to watch, and we'd
Mm-hmm.
kind of go through them. So today on this Friday, before the 49ers face the Green Bay Packers, John, I've done my five to watch. And would you like to tell the story of what happened a couple of weeks ago when I was on you
Yeah.
guys?
So Greg, as Greg is known to do, was like, Mayoko, where's the five? Like, to prepare for the interview, we need to know the five, and then we nitpick. I don't nitpick your five. He would nitpick your five. I don't know, man. And so anyway, we were considered, and you did this quite well, and it speaks to your brilliance, which I think I'm the first one who gave you those type of names, but then everybody else stole it, and I stopped. But that basically we went through them together, and you called us a blue ribbon panel, which is, by the way, very nice of you, but not nearly accurate, at least in my case. But anyway, so yeah, we can go through the five, because we had kind of established that that's what we would do.
So in that day, it had slipped. I had stuff going on. There's more
You just
to
didn't
life.
post it, right? You had it.
I hadn't even sat down. I had totally forgot that I had to post my five to watch. And so I'm on the air with you guys, and you bring it up, and I'm like, oh no. Hey, we're gonna have to make this quick because I have to write my five to watch, which is supposed to
You're
be on
very
our
busy,
website.
right?
And
Yeah,
so we went through it, and then yes, we kind of talked our way through it. And by the time I was off the air with you guys, it was like, oh, I have my five to watch now, and I quickly wrote it up and posted it.
yeah. Okay,
Okay,
so
so
here's the caveat today, because you're going to know this better than I do. Uh, if we do a five, there are 3 players that I might have, or you might have in that five, who we don't know if they're going to play. So Brock Purdy, Trent
yeah,
Williams, Nick Bosa.
yeah.
If you're going to Green Bay, and we do this all the time, this is the most important game of the year. Well, it will be until Buffalo next week. But what's the status of those 3 before we go into the five?
Okay, so the 49ers have to release their injury report on Friday. I think there's a good chance that one or more of those guys will be listed as out. Now,
Mm,
generally for a home game, they'll keep it, kind of questionable. But if let's just say Trent Williams, if you're the 49ers and Trent Williams has this ankle injury that forced him to get shot up last week to play in a game, and Kyle Shanahan just said it flat out, Toradol. That was
yep.
the shot.
Yeah.
But if you're the 49ers and you have 6 more games after this one, and you don't think Trent Williams is going to be available to play, there's no way he travels to Green Bay. The last thing you want him doing is spending, what is it, 4 hours at 35,000 feet on a flight to Green Bay and a
Yep.
flight back from Green Bay. So if
Plus,
he,
if we're being honest, you wouldn't want to lose this game. It's an NFC game. Obviously, you don't want to fall to 5 and 6. But I think that long term, and I know we're getting down to it, if that's the case of what you just said, I wouldn't play him anyway. If you fall to 5 and 6, it's not the greatest thing in the world. But also, as you sit right now, Arizona's 6-4 and you're 5-5, so you're not out of it. You're probably out of a wild card spot, because I just think that you're going to at least need to win 10. But you're not out of the division. So let's just say that Arizona wins. They play Seattle this weekend after coming off their bye. Arizona comes off their bye. So let's say they go 7-5 and you go 5-6. I mean, it's not great. I'm not saying that, but at least you're in a situation where, or 7-4, I should say. They're 6-4. They go 7-4, but you're 2 back and you still play them. And Arizona's okay, not great. So I don't know what you think, although they have lost 3 division games, I guess. So that would be problematic. But is what I'm saying, I guess, is this a must win or close to it must win game in your mind? Or do you say, you know what? we still have games after this. We're going to be okay. How do you look at it?
I think it's about as close to a must win.
Okay. So
And
then you play him, right? Then are you
well,
forced to play him at that point?
not if he's not able to play.
Right.
And so that's the thing. It's like if you know he's not going to be able to play, you have to rule him out if he's not going to be traveling. I mean, the last thing you want is for these guys who could be staying home and rehabbing and not getting on a plane and traveling. You want them available if they can't play this week to play next week. Well, the best way to have them play next week and for the 5 games after that would be for them to take care of their bodies now. And so that does nobody any favor. So that injury report comes out, I think around one or, so we'll
Real
find out.
quick, just because I don't want to take away from the five because that's what we're getting to. So people hang on. But if you rank them in order of how likely they are to play, how would you rank those three?
I think I would go, whoa, that's a good one. I'd say Trent, least likely.
Ooh,
And then I
okay.
think I'd say maybe I'd go Trent, Bosa, Purdy.
Okay.
But
That's probably, yeah.
watching Purdy just kind of toss passes on the side yesterday and seeing the head athletic trainer, Dustin Little, come over and start, rubbing his shoulder, that kind of makes me wonder. And from what I understand, Brandon Allen got all the first team reps. So here's how I kind of put together this five to
Okay.
watch.
Let's do it.
I figured there's enough uncertainty with those three guys, and we don't. And if those guys are healthy, they're probably among the top five. If they're not healthy and can't play, then obviously their backups are among the top five. But we're going to focus in on the five guys we know will be available. And regardless of who plays, they will have to step it up and have good games. And so my number one guy is Christian McCaffrey because regardless of who's a quarterback, that running game has to get going. And McCaffrey is what about almost 2 yards lower per carry than he was last year. They got to get going, and it just hasn't looked right with that running game. And McCaffrey is doing good stuff in the passing game, catching passes out of the backfield, but the running game has to get going. And whether he's rusty, whether his eyes are sharp, whatever the case may be, physically, he needs to get going, and this is the week to do it.
Well, and let me add this is that both the Packers and the 49ers have struggled in the red zone. We've said it a million times. It's time for them to rectify that. I think that the game could come down to who's better in the red zone. You don't want to be kicking field goals. Who's better in the red zone? And the Packers have struggled, and we know the 49ers have struggled. And I was told that when Christian McCaffrey got back, they were going to get better. So like you said, now that we're 2 games into this thing and he looked better in the first game than he did the second game, and I'm not worried that you were down there. I'm not worried that he wasn't practicing. That's just precautionary stuff. But I agree with you 100%. He's got to be better. He's got to be the threat or close to it. And they have to be better in the red zone. And we were all told that they were going to be better in the red zone because of Christian McCaffrey.
Okay, the other one, it's not left tackle, it's right tackle. It's Colton McKivitz. And I know he's kind of a lightning rod for criticism, but he's playing a lot better this year than he did last year. At least he's grading out. And I don't know how much stock you put into PFF, but they have him ranked as the number 7 right tackle in the NFL. So I think everybody who says, oh, they need to bench McKivitz or they need to get a replacement, that's a lot easier said than done in today's NFL, where all the great athletes are on the defensive line. McKivitz is doing, I would say, a good job at right tackle. He's playing well enough for the 49ers to win. But if you don't have Trent Williams or Trent Williams isn't healthy, there might be more help needed on that side. And so therefore McKivitz will probably be one-on-one a lot more, and they need him to lock it down and have a pretty clean pass block sheet in order for the 49ers to win this game.
I would agree, and I'd add this too, that when people look at PFF, like you said, you kind of take it with a grain. But John Lynch said, I heard him on Friday morning say that he thinks that that's pretty accurate. He was asked about Pro Football Focus numbers, and I think they have analytically the Niners line anywhere from like 8 to 12, depending on what analytics you're looking at. And John Lynch said he thought that was pretty accurate. So if the head of the 49ers thinks that number is accurate, then it's accurate. And I agree with you that, look, let's be honest. Who's not a coach, who can analyze offensive line play to a high degree? I mean, we know it when they blow it. We know it when they hold as far as fans or media. But generally speaking, and this is why I think Pro Football Focus has an issue, and Joe Staley has told me this, is they don't always know what your assignment is. So it's not entirely accurate. The only time we know whether, somebody like McKivitz screws up is when he holds or when it's obvious that somebody, uses him like a turnstile. So I agree with you. I don't think people realize that he's doing a really nice job. And then you got Pooney right next to him, who's doing a great job according to Pro Football Focus. So the right side, yeah, absolutely huge.
Yeah, a couple of points there. Like for instance, the Super Bowl. Like a lot of people originally like, oh, McKivitz blew that
Right.
block and it wasn't. It was Spencer Burford who did not
Absolutely.
pick it up. And the other part is we don't watch every offensive line around the league. And
Right.
well, maybe I don't, but fans when they watch their team, offensive line is one of those positions, kind of like defensive back, where you only notice them when they screw up. And
Right.
so you see the negative more and you don't realize that other teams are screwing up too on the offensive line. And with the PFF grades, yeah, it might not be perfect. They might not know everything that's happening as far as the nuances and the technicalities and all that of the blocking. But, they miss some. But generally speaking, it kind of all evens out. And I would say the guys who are playing well have the better grades, and the guys
Well,
who aren't playing well have the lower grades. It kind of
right.
evens out that way.
And I want to get to the rest of them because offensive line play, probably we're losing listeners as we speak. But the one thing I'll say is that if you look at the numbers and you use logic and looking at it, like Detroit is the number one offensive line according to Pro Football Focus. They're the best offensive line in football, and I don't need numbers to tell me that. And you can see the good lines, and then like Seattle's near the bottom. And Seattle, you consistently watch Seattle games, they're terrible. So, you use your brain to kind of what you know, at least the extent that you know, and they're fairly accurate. Maybe they're off by one or two or whatever, not perfect, but if you use your eyes and then put it next to the numbers, it's generally similar.
Yeah. Okay. My number three guy, Fred Warner.
Yep.
This is a game where the stars have to come out, and Fred Warner is a star. He started off the season on a torrid pace, slowed down a little bit as far as the takeaways, and this is an opportunity, I think, for him, especially when you consider kind of matched up a lot against Josh Jacobs. The Packers will want to run the ball. Fred Warner is going to want to stuff the run. So I think this is a big one for Fred Warner.
I think it's absolutely huge, and I think people forget Josh Jacobs is there and he can catch it, he can run it. He's a complete back. But and I hesitate when I say this because Fred is so great, but he over the last few weeks hasn't been quite Fred Warner-ish, and he's just unfortunately for him because the defense has lacked in so many areas, and it's just not as good as it used to be, and they don't have Dre Greenlaw and all the certain things that we already know about. He's just got to be a superstar every week. And it's not his fault that maybe some weeks he's not or how banged up he is this late in the season, but Fed's got to be Superman. I mean, that's all there is to it. And if Nick Bosa doesn't play, that's more pressure on him. You'd like to have at each level these guys they're having an impact. But Fred, for this defense to be good, and it's not like it used to be, he's got to be Superman. And it's not fair to make him be that every week, but that's what he has to be.
Yeah. And speaking of Superman on the offensive side, 2021, man, Debo Samuel was as good as it gets. And he was kind of broke new ground, I think, in the NFL. And it's really been something that's been talked about for each of the past 4 years since then. Around draft time, everyone's looking for the next Debo. Well, it's time for Debo to be the old Debo. He's got to do better than 2.9 yards per carry. He's got to be more involved in the passing game. They need to get the ball in his hands. And when they get the ball in his hands, he needs to get those yards after the catch or yards after the handoff. And he needs to assert his will in this game too, because he's one of the few guys that the kind of the hard charging nature with which he plays when he's on his game has an impact on the entire offense, but also on the guys on defense. They can like on the sideline, they watch Debo, they get energized. So this is a Debo Samuel game.
He's a tone setter. I mean, that's just what you just said. He's a tone setter, and this year he hasn't done it. And I don't know what it is, but he's not breaking tackles. I mean, if you look at some of the analytics breaking tackles when he's in the backfield, it seems to know the defense seems to know what's going to happen. I don't know if Kyle and tendencies. We often talk about that. And then as far as a receiver, look, we know that Debo Samuel is not the route runner that Ayuk was. You know that he doesn't have the type of skill that, even though he has a lack of speed, Juwan Jennings has. I mean, him not being a major part of the offense. Christian McCaffrey starting slow, missing George Kittle last week, which is going to be a massive thing to have him back. But like you said, Pearsall is still learning. Juwan Jennings is playing at a really high level. They have to have Debo Samuel, and your guess is as good as mine. What you're what your analyst or analysis of what's going on, but he just doesn't seem to be effective in any role. And now it's ever since, I mean, even before the Super Bowl, but he can't get off man coverage. He's just having a hard time. And it seems like teams have figured out how Kyle is using him, and either he needs to get going or Kyle needs to be more creative, whatever the case may be. But he's largely ineffective right now.
Yeah, and yeah, it's tough to figure out. I do think that maybe, I mean, maybe wear and tear has some,
Yeah.
impact on that. I mean, he plays so hard, and he's not an old guy, but
No.
maybe wear and tear does kind of
Well,
catch up.
kind of like a running back, right? I mean, a running back gets to a certain age, and that's kind of how he's done it, right? He breaks tackles, he plays hard, he's hard to bring down, and he's had
Never
a
runs
bunch
out
of
of
injuries.
bounds. Yeah,
Yeah, never runs out of bounds. And then, he's had a bunch of muscle injuries, this, that, and the other, shoulder, because he plays that way. But the fact is that, like, we can go back to Cleveland last year where remember he was getting into a kerfuffle before that game. And then, then he gets hurt on the first play. And for people who don't think he's important, go back to that. Now, they lost Trent too, but when they don't have Debo, they've generally lost games because of that tone setter mentality. He's running guys over. That's the physical play that they play with. So between Trent and Debo and a number of different guys on this team, they kind of send a message and set a tone. And Debo just hasn't been able to do that. He's kind of been a net negative this year.
yeah. Okay, so I like my first four: Christian McCaffrey, Colton McKivitz, Fred Warner, Debo Samuel. My fifth one, I'm going with Leonard Floyd. You know,
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the reason is because, again, don't know where Bosa is going to be.
Right.
If he's healthy, or even if he won't be healthy, but even if he's available to play, how effective will he be? Leonard Floyd is a guy that they signed to get 10 plus sacks. And right now he's at 4.5. So he's a little under that average. I think he needs more pressures. I think he needs more hits on the quarterback. And this is a quarterback in Jordan Love, beginning with that NFC divisional round game against the 49ers. Jordan Love has thrown an interception in 9 consecutive games, 13 total over 9 games. And so there will be opportunities, and the more the 49ers can put a hit on him, put pressure on him, the sack strip, whatever the case may be, uh, the 49ers' best opportunity for takeaways in this game, I believe, is if Leonard Floyd's able to turn the corner and get some hits or put some pressure on Jordan Love.
I would agree, especially with Nick being limited. And even if Nick plays, and I know Nick is tough, we saw what happened at the end of the Seattle game. He just couldn't go. So, how long until the rubber band snaps on Nick Bosa? I think they may have to play him lesser snaps. I think if he goes full bore, I think he could be out of the game. And you're right. I've been watching Jordan Love for a long time because, like me, he's an alum of the fine Harvard of the West, Utah State University, and he was wild in college. And he'll do those things. He believes in himself. He's got that whippy arm. And like you said, if he's able to sit back there all week or all day long, it's going to be a problem for them. He does throw interceptions, like you said, and Demo Lenore was really, as was happy to hear that he's ready to go.
Licking his
I,
chops.
yeah, but let me ask you this: there's been criticism, obviously, of Nick Sorensen. You're going to criticize anybody if the defense isn't playing to their capabilities, at least in the eyes of the fans. If Nick isn't able to go, or if Nick is limited, and it's just Leonard Floyd, they haven't been able to get the 4-man pressure. They certainly weren't on Seattle at the end of that game. Do they have to bring blitzes? I know Nick doesn't want to do that. They do it at one of the lower rates in the league, but you got to bring more than 4. You got to trick it up. How do you do it if you're limited? Because you got to get pressure on this guy.
Yeah, I think they do. I think they do have to bring more, and I'll even go the opposite way too. I think they maybe sometimes rush 3, and put
Yep.
8
There you
back in
go. Drop.
coverage just to
Mhm.
kind of change things up. But I don't think they can be predictable like they've been. They've been able to, get away with being predictable, I think, in years past because their pass rush has been so good.
Have so
And
much talent.
if you can send 4 guys and you're going to get pressure on the quarterback, that's the way to go. Don't leave yourself vulnerable on the back end. But I think this game they might have to mix it up. They might have to bring 5. They might have to bring 6. They might on occasion bring 3 and just try to clog those lanes, cut down on the zones, and just kind of do some different things because they're going to have to manufacture more without Bosa out there, or even with
Yeah.
Bosa out there, even if he's not a 100%.
Well, I mean, we've seen other defenses do it against the 49ers. Teams who are not man teams are bringing a little bit more. I'd love to see. I know they don't do this a ton, but some zone concepts where you don't know who's coming, or the Seattle scheme is great. I'm not saying it's not, but you just hit on something that's really important. it works well when you have the great personnel. Seattle, when under Pete Carroll, didn't run a bunch of stuff. They just said, look at this talent we have. We're just going to run this very, very well. And because the 49ers may be short or aren't as talented as they've been in the past, I think sometimes you got to mix it up, because if they know what's coming and it's a four-man and they can block it, they don't have the greatest names out there, but they have a deep receiver core. They'll use their tight ends. They'll use Josh Jacobs out of the backfield. And as you pointed out, Jordan Love will make mistakes if pressured. Hell, we saw it to end the game when Drake Greenlaw got the interception and Greg was yelling, "Get down, get down!" He'll make mistakes, as you just pointed out, 9 straight games with a pick, but not if he doesn't have pressure. If he's able to sit back there, he's gonna pick them apart.
Yeah. All right, John. Well, we would you mind kind of filling us in? A week ago,
Yeah,
we got some really bad news from KNBR. So what's going on in the world of John Lund right now?
it's just about getting balls up in the air, and I got a lot of friends, and I've been doing this 27 or 28 years, just a long time, and it's exciting. It's scary and exciting at the same time, and I'll have some news about some things going on, but I got nothing but great memories of KNBR. Worked with a ton of great people. To get a run, like I said, 14, 15 years in a market like this, I'm nothing but thankful. And like I said, this has never happened to me in 28 years. So you know how the media business works. It's like walking on a high wire. And so, for 28 years in nearly 15 years in this market, to be able to walk that high wire has been awesome. So I got nothing negative to say about anything. And I'm hoping to do a lot of new projects. And we all know where the industry's going and all those kind of things. I don't need to map it out for everybody. Everybody realizes it. So, I'm going to have a lot of fun things, and I'm grateful for people like you who I've known for so long to reach out and have me on, and stuff like that. But you'll be seeing a lot more of me. I'm not going away, unfortunately, for the people who don't like
That's good.
Life is still good.
This
Life
video
is
is
good.
brought to you by Canyon Club Brewery in Moraga. And so maybe, John, I'll have you come out
Oh,
and we can tip one back or have some tasty bites at Moraga. I don't know if you've been to Canyon Club Brewery, but
I
it's
have not, but I mean, I've been to Moraga and I enjoy it quite a bit. It's a hop skip for me. It's nothing right down the road, right down 680.
well,
Nothing.
plenty of hops
Oh,
and
very nice.
some skip at Canyon Club Brewery. Yeah, it's right down the street from St.
Yeah.
Louis College and pretty close to where I live. So Canyon Club Brewery. If you come, maybe you'll see me and John talking shop, talking football, discussing the five to watch and all
Yes.
that. So Canyon Club Brewery coming soon to the Livery in Danville. Uh,
Oh,
you've been there.
yeah. That's real close to me. I could walk to that.
Yeah,
Very
so
nice.
okay, maybe that's what we'll do. Maybe we'll save you
Yeah.
getting in the car and we'll meet over there.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Very good
Okay.
idea, actually.
So, yeah, I mean, I want to say to you because and I've told you this, I've always, going on radio when I was in newspapers and then go to NBC Sports Bay Area. Radio was king when I was
Yep.
starting, and just kind of that exposure. And I want to thank you for always kind of bringing out my personality because I think sometimes on TV, I kind of keep it pretty, close to the vest and
Yeah.
you know, pretty, whatever. But I always enjoyed talking with you and Greg, and because we could just kind of be ourselves and just you forget you're even on the radio.
You
It's like
do.
so I really appreciate how you always had a great way of kind of drawing me out and bringing out my personality, making me look better than I am, I think.
No, I'm telling you, man, we had so many fun days. And what was really cool about you is you would listen maybe like the segment before you would, and you would know what was going on with the show and you knew all the bits and you'd make fun of us. And you use the medium like it's properly supposed to be used because we're having fun and we're just talking shop and we're just talking sports and football and Niners. And while it's important to fans, and I understand why, and important to all of us, at the end of the day, it's a game. And unfortunately, and if it doesn't work out, then the next year, and it's just supposed to be fun. And so I always approached it as, I'm not talking about war. I'm not talking about, politics. I'm not talking about, ever since the pandemic, we really got tight in what we wanted to talk about. And so we just really had a lot of fun. And that's what we tried to do. I try to laugh every day and have a bunch of fun and treat it like it's supposed to be treated. And, I don't get into any politics anymore. I don't get any deep topics. I love talking about things that happen in our life. People get to know you. And I think that you've done just such a tremendous job of, you're a top notch, not, reporter and insider and all these different things that you do. But like you said, the more that I knew you over the years, the more personality came out, the more fun we had. And, you would make jokes, but at the end of the day, you found this medium between your personality coming out and the fun and letting people get to know you, but yet the credibility that you always had. And it's awesome. And nobody does it like you. And you got a group of great people covering the 49ers. I think it's the best group of any sport. You guys have a ton of fun. You guys are close, and you wear the Pacific shirt every year, and people joke and laugh, and it's just a great group of people that do it. But you've found the perfect medium between the guy who knows and the guy who has fun, and it's that's not an easy thing to do. So one person has one side or another side of it. You got both. Great.
And probably more importantly, providing lessons on skincare and
Everything. I mean,
so
what have we not talked about? I mean, you'll even go down when I take you down the rabbit hole of some things that maybe are a little bit iffy. By the way, just for the record, Greg did most of those things, but I got blamed for him.
Yeah,
But you even do that on the occasion. So you knew you were very good at being able to walk that line, which again, a lot of times Greg was not. He'd just blow right through it.
Okay, we're going to end it on a 49er thing. You talk about
Yeah.
like sports supposed to be fun, but what's
Yep.
not fun for the 49er fans right now is looking at this game. PFF, we're going back to PFF. They
Yeah.
have this playoff probability
Uh-oh.
meter or whatever.
Uh-oh.
If the 49ers win, 52% chance they make it to the postseason. If they lose against the Packers, 15%.
Oh,
Does that seem right to you?
nah.
I actually think the 52 seems a little bit high to me.
It does. It would depend on what Arizona does. I guess we got to be Seattle fans this weekend, but if 52 seems high, 15 certainly seems low. And I'm with you.
Well, I think 15,
we've seen
I
this.
think 15 seems high if the 49ers
Do
lose
you?
this.
I think 52 seems high, and I think 15 seems a little low, only because I understand what the schedule is, and going to Buffalo after that and still having to play the teams that they have to play is not, like even Miami. I don't care how Miami's playing at the time. They just beat the Rams in LA. That's going to be a tough game if Tua, is starting that game. Plus, you got to go across the country, as you well know, and Buffalo's not easy. Their schedule is not easy. Detroit at home, they look like a juggernaut, the best team in the NFC. They don't look like they are. So, yeah, the schedule is the schedule. But the only thing and this isn't anything based on what they've done or what we've seen from them this year, it's just it seems like Kyle gets it together. Now, having said that, they should have won the Seattle game if that were the case. I mean, that was a desperate game they needed to win, and they didn't. And the reason why is, I'm not totally blaming it, but fourth quarter defense, they're one of the worst fourth quarter defenses in the league. And we know from the Rams, the Cardinals, and the Seahawks, and in other games as well, Dallas got close. The one thing we didn't talk about, because it's not a specific player, is late in games, they got to be better. I mean, do you have any confidence whatsoever that if a team is going to drive on the 49ers in the fourth quarter and attempt to win the game, that the offense will beat their defense? And when I was sitting in the booth during the games, I would look next to the person sitting next to me, and I'd say, do you trust this defense? And every single time it was no. And most times it was right. I don't know what's going on late in games. I don't know, again, is that Nick Sorensen? Is that, what's going on there? But late in games, and look, the NFL is a one-score league. I expect the Packers and 49ers to be close, and I don't know if they can do it. But just back to your percentages, can they go 5-6 and the Cardinals, let's say the Cardinals beat the Seahawks and the Cardinals go 7-4, so you're 5-6, they're 7-4. Can you still win the division? Problem is they haven't played well in the division, right? Because they've got the three losses.
Because instead of a 2-game lead, that'd be a 3-game lead because Arizona would have
6 to go.
So here's another part. You talk about the defense. I'm not disagreeing with you at all, but I also think the 49ers offense has left the 49ers defense in bad situations. So I would say not only the 49ers fourth quarter defense, but also their fourth quarter offense. If the 49ers offense took care of business against Seattle with 4 minutes left, we wouldn't be talking about
you're right.
Because the defense would have never stepped foot on the field again.
No, that's a great point. They haven't. It is, and we've talked about complimentary football all season long. I mean, that's complimentary football. You're leaving guys hanging out to dry. The last thing, and if you got more, of course we can talk more. But if Purdy doesn't play, and you put him kind of of those three, you put him as the most likely to play. But if he doesn't play, what do we get in Mr. Allen?
I think it'll be Brock Purdy light. I think it'll be similar. Probably won't be running as much as we've seen Purdy run this year.
Yeah.
I think it'll be back foot hits the ground, ball's coming out. I think he's a smart guy. He's 32 years old, only has 9 NFL starts, hasn't started a game since the final game of the 2021 season. So, from what I understand, he's looked good in practice, and they won't ask him to do a whole lot. Just run the offense. He's a smart guy. It'll be, very much, I would think, very much ball control, quick passing game, keep the chains moving. I think it'll be, nothing flashy. It'll be Christian McCaffrey. It'll be,
Yep.
get the ball to Kittle, get the ball to Debo. Yeah, I know. I think it'll be kind of more the same, just maybe not as, I don't know. They'll take deep shots with Purdy. They haven't here the last couple of weeks, but yeah, like I said, I don't know even what that exactly means, but I think you get the idea. Brock Purdy light.
Yeah, I don't know enough about Brandon Allen. I know who he is, and I've seen him play, and I know the preseason. I know he backed up in Cincinnati, but I'm talking about regular season play. And I'm not trying to start a controversy, but I've seen what Josh Dobbs can do, and maybe Allen can do it, but I know Josh Dobbs can do it. I've seen him beat teams with the Cardinals and the Vikings, and I understand when he first came in that maybe he didn't know the offense like an Allen does, like a Brandon Allen does, and I know that a lot of this has to do with how much Kyle trusts somebody. I understand that too, and ultimately it's his decision. So he's in the building, he's with them every day, and he knows. But I've seen Josh Dobbs win games,
Yeah.
so I'm a little nervous about it because I don't know what to expect from Brandon Allen.
Here's how I understand it. Brandon Allen won the backup job, or Kyle Shanahan gave him the backup job because he was more similar to Purdy. But it's
Yeah,
almost like this new version of Purdy where he's running around is more
right.
similar to
Dobbs can do that.
Dobbs. And so
Yeah,
Dobbs is a guy that, um, I don't think he went through the progression like the coach wanted to during the preseason. It was almost like his second read was to run.
yeah,
Now, when you're playing for your life, like the 49ers are, maybe a guy like that isn't necessarily the worst thing, especially if the Mariners get behind and they have to make some plays and they just need to like, just kind of, hey, let's go play street ball, something like that. So we'll see, but
yeah. Well, my fear too is that what you just described, how Josh Allen's going to play the game. Packers know that, and so they've already put clamps
wish Josh,
on
they wish
what.
Josh Allen, maybe Brand.
Oh no! Oh my God! Did I say Josh Allen? Oh my God! Brandon Allen. They know that that's going to be the offense, right? A conservative, don't turn the ball over. We're going to try to. So they're going to just clamp down on that and just say, okay, that's. I don't know if a simple game plan can beat Green Bay. Maybe it can, because the one thing we haven't talked about, because we've sat here talking so much about the 49ers, and we should, is that Green Bay is not consistent either. I mean, they're a team that have early in the season. Love wasn't there. They won some games, which is amazing with Malik Willis as limited as he is, and that's how they kind of won games. Being conservative, they survived that, and then Love has came back. He was good, and now he's throwing the interceptions. He's kind of been inconsistent, which is what I thought they were going to get with him when I watched him a lot at Utah State. So, I just think that Green Bay is gonna say, okay, if that's not Purdy, we're going to clamp down on this thing. They're not going to run it. We're going to make Brandon Allen beat us, and that's where I think Josh Dobbs might be a better option. But who knows?
Yeah, and that might be something that, they would, again, if Purdy isn't available to play, and depending on how the game goes, it could lead to, an in-game quarterback switch.
Yeah, of
You never know, just based on how it
yep,
is. All right. Well, John, thank you so much for joining me. And
course.
maybe we can do this again, and you'll keep us posted on what's happening in your world, I'm sure. I hope.
I will. And thank you for calling. I appreciate it that you didn't forget about me. You find out who your true friends are, and Matt Miyoko is my true friend. So there you go.
Well, thank you.
Glad to do it.
Let's do meet at Canyon Club for a beer real
Let's
soon.
do it. I'm ready. My
Okay. Take
schedule
care,
is
John.
as suddenly opened up.
Okay,
Thank you very
sounds
much.
good. All right.
See you,
Thanks
Maddie.
for watching, and well, that's it for now.